Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Morning Torah, the I don't have much of a voice edition. And as a result, I'm going to talk for as long as I can, but please forgive me if we finish a little bit early. It just depends on how the voice holds out, but I will do my best. Okay, in any case, welcome everybody, and I hope you're all doing well. We have this morning a sort of curious coincidence of Parshiot in the Torah. And I want to talk not only about the normal Parsha that we would read, which is called Tazria, which is all about skin diseases, but also about the fact that Tazria this morning comes at a time preceding one of the special Shabbatot before Pesach, Shabbat HaChodesh. This Sabbath is Rosh Chodesh. It is the beginning of the month of Nisan. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the month of Nisan, let me just say, Nisan is the month where the spring holiday of Pesach takes place, and therefore Nisan is the month of spring. And on this Shabbat, not only do we have Tazria, which is all about skin diseases, but we have Shabbat HaChodesh, which introduces the holiday of Pesach, of Passover. You have a reading from the Torah that introduces the holiday of Passover from the book of Exodus, as well as Tazria that talks, as I said, about skin diseases. So the reason that I think this conjunction of two Parshiot is so fruitful to explore and to understand is because Tazria is in some ways the least inspirational portion of the Torah. It really is. If you have this kind of discoloration on your skin and the priest sees this kind of discoloration, it could be this kind of disease and you have to do this kind of thing. And there are ritual impurities involved. And very, very few people, my guess is almost nobody in history has walked away from Parshat Tazria and said, wow, that really moved my soul. In fact, it's exactly the kind of thing that people who have negative associations with the Old Testament, as it's called in Christianity, or the Hebrew Bible, as Jews refer to it, identify as that which is uninspiring in the Hebrew Bible. And I certainly understand that take, although obviously I'm setting you up to try to change that in some way. And what I want to emphasize here, and in some ways the fact that I don't have much of a voice this morning is a kind of ideal setup for this, although I promise you it was not deliberate, is the issue of physicality. That is, every religion struggles with what does it mean to be a body? What does it mean to have a body? What does it mean to be, as we all are, captive to your body in ways good and bad? I just on Twitter and Facebook, I posted a link to the fact that Bruce Willis has developed aphasia and therefore will no longer be acting. And I mentioned that my mother, as a result of a brain aneurysm in her case, had expressive aphasia for 30 years. And it was clear how much this change in her body changed her, and how painful that change was. And you could not know her or her life and not appreciate the fact that this physical change had made an enormous spiritual change as well. And as much as we try sometimes to believe that we are totally separate from our physical structure, that there's a part of us that is separate, we keep getting dragged back. And so you can toss your mind to the end of the universe. I mean, we have these brilliant minds that can calculate unbelievable ideas and concepts, and can invent things, and can sit in a room and think of eternity, and can develop philosophical ideas and feel like they connect to God, and develop tremendous spiritual lives and become fantastic mystics. And yet, in the midst of it, if they have to go to the bathroom, they have to go to the bathroom. And that weird contradiction, about which we could talk a lot, but this morning I just want to make one central point about it. That weird contradiction between the beauty, depth, ethereality, non-physicality of spiritual life and the deep, mechanistic, fleshly reality of physical life is something that every religious tradition and every human being has to struggle with. And so when we read the Torah, sometimes we could be enchanted into believing that human beings are spirits. T.R. Desjardins said this very beautifully, the Jesuit theologian. He said, we're not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. But the power of that physical experience is enormous and riveting. And so any attempt to deny the physicality of human beings ultimately fails. We know this from attempts, if you try to deny your physicality by not eating, eventually you die. There are some who've denied their physicality by not having sex, but it has many, many, many difficulties and complications and is not always successful, as we know, often to our pain and to the pain of others. So Judaism does not take those approaches. That is, there are fasts in Judaism, but chronic continual fasting is not generally, there have been some exceptions, a feature of Jewish spirituality. And celibacy, again, is not a feature of Jewish spirituality. In fact, the first commandment, the very first commandment in the Torah is be fruitful and multiply. And until very recently, there was only one way to do that. So the general approach of Jewish tradition is to try to elevate the physical. That is, before you eat, which is a purely physical act, you say a bracha, you say a blessing. It elevates the physical. And the idea that you are a body, but you are a body with more than physical aspirations, that you're a body inhabited by a spirit, is how Judaism tries to reconcile this. And the reason that I bring it up is that Tazria, happening at the same time as Passover, is a powerful affirmation of the fact that this same people who witness miracles at the sea and are the special preserve of God's love and have been liberated to presumably be servants of God, these same people who you think would be spiritual beings, given the fact that they are under the direct providential care of the Almighty, this same people get skin diseases. And Tazria is one of those portions of the Torah that really brings you down to earth and says the Jews were not liberated from Egypt to head into the Garden of Eden. They were liberated to all the difficulties and pains and physicalities of everyday life. That's why at the beginning I said the fact that I almost don't have a voice is a perfect time to talk about this subject. It doesn't matter that I'm talking about the Torah, right? If I don't have a voice, I don't have a voice. If there's something physical wrong, there's something physical wrong, because we're all bodies moving through this world. And the Torah doesn't want us to forget it and to pretend that it doesn't matter, or that we can somehow negate, neglect, or ignore our physicality, because you can't. And if you do, sooner or later, it will come back to bite you. The great sage Hillel was once walking to the bathhouse, and one of his disciples says, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm on my way to perform a mitzvah." Because to bathe yourself, to take care of yourself, to watch over and guard the body you're given is also a mitzvah. And it's one of the reasons why you're not allowed to deliberately harm yourself, because you can't elevate your spirit by destroying your body. And it is a positive commandment to take care of your body. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, why many rabbis, Orthodox, conservative, and Reform, issued responsa that said that getting the vaccine was a mandate according to Jewish law, because it's caring for your body. Now, I don't want to get into vaccine debates. I'm not making a point about the vaccine. I'm making a point about Jewish law. Okay, so please, let's leave that aside. The point is that the idea of taking care of your body is a mandate according to Jewish law, and Tazria gets very specific with what it means. And people who think of that as a non-spiritual part of the Torah mistake the fact that your body is an essential and ineradicable part of what it means to move through this world. And you can't be a spiritual being without a physical component. So when you have at the same time that there is a liberation and there's also a disease, you remember that both are true. And what Sandy is saying on the chat is the usual explanation that Sarat comes because you did something wrong, or Mitzvah comes because you did something wrong. And there is certainly in the Torah often a connection between illness and misbehavior. But I want to go deeper than that, because this is Susan Sontag's illness as a metaphor, that we often see illness as an indication that someone did something wrong. And I think that it's really important that we go beyond that. Sometimes that's true. You smoke for 50 years, you can't say, why did I get lung cancer? But it is an essential condition of being human. Everyone gets ill. Everyone dies. And it's not only about doing something wrong, as is sometimes the case, granted, with tzara'at, with skin diseases or so on. It's the external sign that you did something wrong. It's what happens to Job when Job is punished. He has boils on his skin as an external sign that he did something wrong, although in fact he didn't. And that's the whole point of Job, is you can get sick, you can suffer without having done anything wrong. But I want us to understand that the connection between illness and evil ought to be severed in our minds. And while there are illnesses that are the product of evil, there are a lot of illnesses that are the product of bodies, of being human, of having come into this world as a person in God's world. And as long as you're a person in God's world, you will sooner or later be a person taken out of God's world. And that is through some kind of malfunction of your body, even if it's through extreme aging, which is, after all, a function of physicality. Because when someone who's 100 years old says, inside, I feel like I'm 20, you say, I know you may feel that way inside, but your body, your physicality does not reflect that internal state. So I want to, as I said, give Tazria its due. That is to remind us of the deep and abiding physical nature of being a person. Because when we come to Pesach, and you have to only eat this or only eat that, that is, after all, an entirely physical act, right? Eating this or eating that, it's a choice and it's physicality. But that physical act, you're treating yourself as a body, has a deep spiritual component. It is a recognition of your physicality and an appreciation of the spirit that underlies it. Now, I could talk more about this, but I almost can't talk more about this because I think it is entirely possible that though the spirit is willing, the throat is weak. So as I said, I'm sorry to finish a little bit early this time. I want to thank, I don't know who else made a comment. Sandy made a really helpful and useful comment. And the only other comment I see is Brandy, yes, this is always on the Sinai Temple YouTube site. It's on my Facebook page. Anybody is welcome to replay it. And I wish you a good week in which both your spirit and your bodies will be healthy. Take care. Bye-bye.